These guys survived the David Kahn era of Timberwolves basketball and live to tell about it. It's Flagrant Howls.
All right, this is going to be a Mike Conley appreciation episode that, Kyle kind of floated this a couple days ago as like an aside, I think, on the Tuesday or Monday episode. He said, no, let's pause this. Let's do a full episode. But I actually would like to start you with, we've gotten some emails, at least 3 of them in the last couple weeks from the grammar police talking about the intro of the show. I don't know if you've seen a couple of these.
Too, yep.
That I'm just going to roll it again one more time here, and we can decide if we need to change this going forward or if it's too much.
These guys survived the David Kahn era of Timberwolves basketball and live to tell about it.
So people are taking issue with survived the David, like survive implying lived through already, right? Survived the David Kahn era and lived to tell about it. That's saying the same thing twice. That it should be these two guys went through the David Kahn era of Timberwolves basketball and lived to tell about it.
No, I appreciate that. It must be a good sign for the podcast that it is now being broken down like the Zapruder film.
Yeah.
Grammar has always been something that's very important to me. I never really picked up on that. But also, if it sounds wrong or silly or kind of dumb, my vote would be to keep it because that's kind of my brand, is those things. But I guess that makes sense. I've never really thought about it. If you survive
the fall, but you know what? If I said, hey, I survived a bear attack in the woods and lived to tell about it. Yeah. Or would you say I experienced a bear attack in the woods and lived to tell about it?
It sounds cooler to say survived, but I get that. I'm down for either one. I just okay. I didn't even want to. I was honestly going to ask if we could just pause. I wanted to go. Give me a second. I'm going to go find the Timberwolves in the Western Conference standings, then we can start.
Oh, for sure.
Just kidding. I found them. They're first place still.
You don't have to look too far.
Also, too, as we get ready to talk about Mike Conley, last pod you and I did, we had the big question about will or has or when will Rudy Gobert surpass Jimmy Butler on the all-time Timberwolves list? And then Rudy Gobert had his best game as a Timberwolf. So a little bit ball there, but that performance against Chet Holmgren, which you talked about yesterday, I think with Judd and Declan against the Thunder, was truly one of the best basketball performances I've ever seen in a regular season game, of course, in November. But I've seen a lot of Jazz fans, media, they're starting to infiltrate Wolves Twitter because their team is having a really tough season. Obviously, the Wolves and Jazz play tonight at Target Center, but
they got a bunch of draft picks, so
so
fine.
Things will be really good for them in 2 presidential terms from now. But the Jazz are like, this is what we were talking about. Like, we knew Rudy Gobert was really good, and now the rest of the world is starting to see. So I wanted to close the book on that because what Rudy did against Chet the other day was, I've watched that game 4 times as an absolute sicko. It was basketball, as you and I like porn. It was basketball porn to the highest degree.
And you sent out at least one of there's 2 or 3 video clips from that game that are making the rounds of. Remember a year ago on this show, and we had watched a month or maybe even a couple. We probably watched a couple weeks of Rudy Gobert. First time we've been entrenched in, okay, we're gonna watch 2.5 hours every night of Rudy Gobert for the first time, and he'd show up in the box score with 12, and his numbers were down a little bit last year, but a 12 and 13 or whatever. But you're we need to figure out the name of the stat where he just train wrecks a possession but doesn't actually get a block or a rebound. And you put out one of the video clips. It's a 45-second possession with at least 1 or 2 offensive rebounds for Oklahoma City. He doesn't tally a stat, right? He doesn't tally a rebound, doesn't tally a steal, doesn't tally a block. And yet he misdirected 6 trips into the lane. You're oh, here I come. I'm Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I'm going to go get a layup. Nope, I'm going to dribble this way now because there's a praying mantis about to steal the ball from me. And then the other possession, I think it was a different possession.
Yep, it was.
Where Chet Holmgren tried 3 different ways to either get to the rim or get a shot off. And at one point, middle of the possession, Rudy flexed.
Thank you.
Dude, he flexed mid-possession. He's yeah. And then the possession continues, and then he gets, I don't know if he actually blocked the shot, but Chet airballed and it hit the bottom of the net. And then Rudy gives another flex. Dude, just give this dude the defensive player of the year, right? It's not even December yet, and we already know who the defensive player of the year is. It's ridiculous.
And he had 2 other moments that I didn't tweet out as they happened, but he had another one where he caught the ball in the post, low post, and just kind of 1-2 dribble, put Chet right in the rim, just like he did Jaren Jackson Jr. the night before against the Grizzlies.
Yeah.
And then another play, and this is just absolute get a therapist level type sickoness, but he also got dunked on by Chet I think Chet was cutting baseline and they gave him the ball and he kind of dunked on Rudy. I love that stuff because Rudy doesn't care. Like, Rudy does not, like, he's going to continue to try to protect the rim. He is okay when he's on the wrong side of a highlight because he has so much confidence now, and I still think health plays a role in it as well, but he just so confident. He's like, I don't even care if I get embarrassed because I know that the world sees how important I am on the defensive end, and it's Tim Conley must just smoke cigar after cigar. I mean, that man is 12 months after what he had to start the season last year with, he must just be. Can you win Executive of the Year for a deal you made 18 months ago? Like,
after everyone buried you too, and I think I don't know. We tried to. I feel like even you and I were wavering a little bit at times. Probably had a little bit more patience and confidence in. Okay, this is a smart dude. He just helped build a championship Nuggets team. He's not going to come in here, make a trade in the first 5 minutes, and just be a bumbling idiot. So there's got to be a reason behind this. We're obviously seeing the reason a year and a half later, but the amount of incredulous complaining that people did a year and a half ago, I don't think it's possible at this point for the praise to out-echo the criticism. But everybody was wrong, dude. Is there any other way to say it at this point? Now, I know we got 75% of the season left to play out here, but objectively, like, everyone who dumped on that trade as it's the Herschel Walker trade, it's the worst trade in NBA history. What are the Timberwolves doing? Like, they're in first place in the Western Conference, and it doesn't look like a fluke. Now, if they lose 10 games in a row and it starts looking clunky again, but this doesn't feel fluky to me at all watching the first almost 20 games.
I know we should still talk about Mike Conley.
For sure.
You're actually talking
100%.
about something that I wanted to bring up because I just kind of stumbled into this morning when do you know who the next 3 opponents are or 4 opponents are on the Wolves schedule, like off the top of your head?
It is, so tonight it's the Jazz. Then I think it's Charlotte. And then they had the two games that were question marks, the 2 worst teams in the Western Conference, right? Grizzlies and the Spurs and then Grizzlies.
Yep.
Okay.
And the only reason I was thinking about that is because, like, the Jazz have a really good young player, Walker Kessler. The Hornets obviously have LaMelo Ball, even though he's injured. And then the Spurs have Wemby. But then I was also just last night, no Wolves on. I don't know if anyone listens to this pod knows how bad the Detroit Pistons are right now. They've lost 15 games in a row. They're the opposite of the Wolves. They haven't won in November. But it just kind of got me thinking, and this goes back to the Rudy Gobert trade and all that stuff, just how important it is to have Anthony Edwards in a winning environment. I still think, and I don't know how nuanced you can be or if I can talk out of both sides of my mouth, but I still think the Wolves overpaid for Rudy because I've yet to hear who else was competing against them. Like, if they would have been able to keep an additional pick, right? Like, all the players they gave out have pretty much proven to be minimum contract guys. Vando got paid a little bit, but Pat Bev has bounced around. Malik Beasley's bounced around. Walker Kessler's having a really down year. But it just kind of comes back to, like, the difference between the Jazz or the Hornets or the Spurs or the Pistons. All those teams have really highly drafted guys. They don't have them in winning environments. And this goes back to our culture talk. We love talking about this. It's just, what would Anthony Edwards, for all the stuff that I get to pull the receipts on now and all the bad comps coming out of 2020 and stuff, and maybe he likes football more than basketball, I do wonder if some of that stuff could have popped up had he been on a team that had lost 15 games in a row. You know what I mean? Yeah,
no, I do. And I mean, let's use Cade Cunningham as an example. So he was the first pick the year after Anthony Edwards was the first pick. And if you just look at, like, the back of the basketball card, stats, okay, he's like 22, 23 points a game. He's, I think he's dishing out like a handful of assists and he's shooting 40%, which is bad. He's kind of a volume 3-point shooter, scorer. But you would look and say, okay, like, Anthony Edwards is a year further progressed, and he's averaging a few more points a game, and Cade's actually averaging, like, more assists, and you could kind of, back of the basketball card, you could kind of be like, oh, they're actually kind of, but if you watch those dudes play, and then you start to dig deeper into their games, like, who actually has winning DNA to their game and to their box score, I would classify at this point, 3 years in, Cade is a bust right now, based on being the number 1 overall pick. In part because of the environment. Maybe some of it's just like Anthony Edwards has that dude in him and other guys don't. But I agree with you. And by the way, think about what we're saying here. We're saying that thank God player A was drafted into the Wolves culture, because otherwise things could have gone totally sideways.
Right. And this is, if you're listening to this and you want to be critical, like there is some chicken and egg here. It's like the Wolves have really turned it around as a franchise a little bit since Ant was drafted. So he gets some of that credit, but Cade Cunningham was a not generational first overall pick, but really, really, really good. I mean, Wemby is generational, and they're like 3-15. And again, I actually kind of enjoy these nights now where the Wolves don't play, just so I can kind of catch up on the league. And it really is tough for these young players that aren't surrounded by other talent. I mean, this is all circling back to what we just talked about with the Gobert trade. Some people were very critical of, like, you're rushing the timeline. Like, Ant's not even going to be in his prime until, he's 26, 27, kind of like Tatum is.
Right.
But Jace Frederick and Dane Moore did a really good job of this the other day. It's actually awesome to be putting Ant at 22 into these high-leverage, high-pressure situations surrounded by a lot of talent. The Wolves clearly have more talent than the Hornets or the Jazz or the Spurs. But that is just expediting this kid's growth and his development, and he's doing stuff now at 22 that it's like,
agreed.
I don't know if he would have been doing that if they would have taken the long, Oklahoma City approach and just tried to accumulate picks and stuff and build for when he's 27. They're trying to build for him now, and he's 22 years old. Jaden's 23, ton of talent on the team, and there's a lot of, what did we say last week? They have a 9% chance to win the finals. Like that's banana cakes to me, and I just the Gobert trade, Tim Conley has to be feeling pretty good about himself right now, because he's got the Defensive Player of the Year, top 3 Coach of the Year candidate, and Ant's on his way to be All-NBA.
I feel like you may have hit on, last year we did, I think, if the playoffs started today or the play-in, we did those updates throughout the whole season. Let's see here. ESPN NBA playoff odds, I think, is what I Googled last time. This should be a weekly staple on the show here.
Yes.
Where we just tell you what the updated chance is, not for the Wolves to make the playoffs, for the Wolves to win the championship. So here's what we have right now on this Thursday, ESPN.com. Boston Celtics have the number 1 chance to win the championship, 19%. Milwaukee Bucks have the number 2 chance to win the championship, 15%. 76ers, 13%. So Eastern Conference representing. The Denver Nuggets are 4th on the list here at 10%, followed by the 5th most likely team to win the NBA championship this year, the Minnesota Timberwolves.
We did it.
Can we hang that banner? I don't even care what happens in December, January. Can we just hey, the Wolves have a 7% chance, 5th best odds in the NBA to win the championship banner.
It would be awesome.
Celebrate.
It would be awesome if they just started hanging banners for everything, just to really I mean, the Clippers hang all the pictures of the Clippers hung a banner for Taylor Swift, I think.
What?
Or I don't know. Someone correct me on that, but there was a banner at Staples Center about Taylor Swift, how many times she sold out Staples Center, and I was up there when the Clippers had games. I don't think the Clippers.
The Lakers
put it up there,
have 9 rows of. They have they're blocking off sections to drape banners, and the Clippers are that concert packed the house a couple nights in a row. It's great.
You know what? To kind of close the loop, because now we're starting to get into we had our seance and our burning ritual last week, and we're just kind of really talking about hoops now. But it also is cool too, because to go back to some of those teams that are really struggling. The Wolves in year 1 of the Gobert experiment, and it didn't go well. So that's what fueled some of the narratives that had popped up about the trade. But there is, I don't know, from a sports perspective, right? You cover all sports, you love sports. People that listen to this love basketball and other sports. It's been cool to watch a team, essentially, the Gobert thing didn't work, and they did the run it back tour, and they received some criticism. And instead of being okay, we tried this, didn't work, blow it up, change everything, they just tried it again, and everyone just tried to get a little better, or be more mature, or sacrifice. I mean, Naz Reid, there's a quote that Dane had last week in the locker room, and Naz Reid said something about players are no longer worried about their contracts. We all have the same goal. And I was okay, that might just be a PR comment that you would make. And then he said it again, I think after the Grizzlies game, or recently, where it's again, he was everyone in this locker room now just has the same goal, and it's winning. It's not about getting paid. And that's last summer, or last season, I should say, Ant wasn't paid yet. Jaden wasn't paid yet. Nas, D'Lo. it's just really cool to see that all these guys now secured the bag and then just matured and developed and was like, you know what now? All I care about is winning. If I don't, like Troy Brown Jr., he was the man. Like that, is it Ant's team? Is it Carl's team? I don't know, man. Maybe it's Troy Brown Jr.'s team.
It's Troy Brown Jr.'s team now,
and
after a couple nights ago.
After just DNPing multiple times, he just came in and was an MVP candidate in that one game. And that stuff is really cool. Because we're so used to now in our favorite team. I mean, the Vikings are going through this, right? You know better than anyone. Blow it up. Tear it down to the studs. And the Wolves just said, you know what? Let's just try again. Let's just step up to the plate, adjust our swing, adjust our stance, and take another swing at this. And again, it's very still small sample size, but we are at the 20% mark of the season.
Yeah.
And it looks sustainable. A week from now, I think we will have another huge milestone to talk about because their next games, again, Utah, Charlotte, San Antonio, Memphis. If they come out of that 3-1 or 4-0, especially probably without Ant for a couple games and maybe not Jaden still, I think we probably just need to put to bed the whole Hawks loss and just be like, that was the third game of the season, and start to really look at like this team is trending week after week as maybe one of the most mature teams in the league, and it should be because it has some older guys on there that are aligned in what their number one goal is, and that's winning a title.
I will say that the Hawks loss still, I don't think about it every waking second of the day, but it still exists in my Timberwolves consciousness when I'm watching these games, and that could be either blowing a 20-point lead or it could just be like not showing up and getting run out of the building, and like the first quarter against Oklahoma City felt a little bit like that, where it's like, here we go. Oklahoma City is young. They're hungry. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is out there every night trying to prove he's one of the top 10 players in the NBA. And they just brought energy, and boom, they're up by 10 points at the end of the first quarter. And my Timberwolves PTSD is creeping in. Like, I don't know, man. Is this the night where they just get embarrassed by 25 at home for no reason? The Kings kind of clowned them a few nights ago. But there's a little bit more fight in this year's team. There's more reference points too for battles that they've gone through, storms that they've sort of weathered, and they can be down by 10 after the first quarter and still know, all right, if we clamp down a little bit more on defense, Chris Finch knows, okay, let's switch to a little bit of a zone here in the third quarter. We still got this, right? So that it still lingers a little for me because it's not like watching the Lakers after a dynasty where you're like, oh, yeah, whatever. We know that this is a championship team. But,
yeah, I think there's some growth as fans. Like, if the Wolves play the Jazz tonight, they probably, math will support this, not be up by 30 after the first quarter. Right? Like, it is a 48-minute game.
This is a trap. This is a trap game, Kyle.
Oh, the next week is a trap. And
Mm-hmm.
I will say, I've been pretty outspoken about, like, hey, the past is the past. We need to move forward. And my wife, who doesn't listen to the pod, which is smart, but does hear me in the other room, did bring up a good point. I was back in Grand Forks, North Dakota a couple of years ago, and I got hit by a car running. Like,
what?
Long story here. But I was just
How
running
fast was the car driving?
elderly lady coming through an intersection. I had the right of way, but I was just running through an intersection, and I kind of got clipped in the butt and just slid over the hood and fell into the grass. But I like to run outside. So the point of this analogy is that when I'm running still, like, I'll pass through an intersection every now and then and think, like, even just maybe laughingly, like, hey, remember when you got hit by that car that one time? But I don't, when I go out for a run every day, think about I could get hit by a car. So that's
you don't
kind
live
of
in fear of getting hit by a car.
Yeah,
But you know that if you get hit by a car, you might still be able to finish your run,
survive
right?
and live to tell about it. Yeah, you know what I mean. So
there you go.
So it's like the Jazz are on the schedule. The Hornets. I mean, there was that Hornets loss a couple of years ago that preceded the Wolves then going into Philly and winning that awesome overtime game. But the Hornets are always kind of a game you circle on the schedule of like, God, who knows what's going to happen there? And there's no LaMelo Ball. But
yeah, I
do walk into these games now because of Rudy Gobert, because of the defense, not worrying about getting hit by a car. There might be a moment in the second quarter I'm like, I hope that Prius doesn't find me. But
yeah,
more than ever, I enjoy these games and I look forward to them. And they have can you just imagine? I'm not even jinxing. I don't believe in that stuff. Like, knock on wood, whatever. Their next 4 games are probably the easiest 4-game stretch they have all season. And they might. But
these are also 4 games with my PTSD. These are the games that they were awful in last year, and their schedule hasn't provided a ton of these types of games yet. That's kind of the amazing thing, is that they're sitting here, first place in the West. There's been a couple games where they've played good teams without their best player, but those games, like the Heat without Butler and the Sixers without Embiid still don't fall into like a home game against the Jazz category of playing a bad team.
No, that's fair.
So in some ways, these next 4 games
Are
one of the this is one of the most interesting tests, because these are games that they had of all the playoff teams, they had the worst record against below 500 teams. They had, what was it, like 12 or 15 inexplicable losses. So go 4-0, even 3-1. It'll leave you with a little bit of, why did they have to lose that one game? So just if they go 4-0 in these games, I would almost consider that like a huge test pass that they didn't fall asleep against the Spurs and the Hornets.
Yeah, they're too. Well, they did play the Jazz, but that Jazz game was at home, sandwiched in between a Nuggets win and a Celtics win.
Yeah,
it's kind of crazy now to look back at their schedule, but their easiest game was probably this past Sunday against the Grizzlies, a game that got a little tight there down the end. They won it by 22 points. Let's call a spade, but yeah, these next 4 games, I know we just completely blew up our agenda of what we're going to talk about, but these next 4 games are a real test, and you do add in the fact that, like, Ant's doubtful tonight, Jaden's still out. They also have, like, built-in excuses, right? Like, they could lose to the Jazz tonight, even though the Jazz are on the second night of a back-to-back, and just be like, well, we didn't have Ant and Jaden. Yeah. But if they go 4-0, Phil, and only 2 of those games are with Ant and 0 of them without Jaden, that's just another, like, feather in the cap of, this is just not the same collection of brains that the Wolves had last year. They're really mature, smart, and to Naz's point, they're all focused on the same goal.
Well, and the leader of that maturity is Mike Conley, who we're going to talk about here in just a moment, after we shout out our friends at Zero Res, Kyle. So Zero Res is here to help you look more presentable in your home for the holidays. We've got family gatherings coming up, dinners with friends. I love a clean house, clean carpets, okay? I don't want to live in filth. There's no better way to deep clean your house for holiday gatherings than with Zero Res. Don't DIY it. You're already stressed. You're trying to cram in work, kids, all this stuff. Go to Zero Res, ZeroResMinnesota.com or 952-0-RES. That's Zero Res. Spell it forward, backwards. It spells the same. If you ask for the Score North special, you get 3 rooms, 0 resified, starting at just $129. And this month, get $75 off when you get your air ducts cleaned, so you can breathe in that fresh air as you're cheering on your favorite basketball team. 952-0-RES or ZeroResMinnesota.com. Spell it forwards or backwards. It spells the same. Zero Res. Maybe they could clean your mustache too while they're at it.
I know.
For the audio audience, we're a half hour in almost. We haven't even talked about Kyle's playoff facial hair here.
I know. It looks like another thing that got hit by a car that's just rested on my upper lip. But I'm trying to get rid of it. But I kind of made a pact to myself. Like, November is a big month for not shaving your face or whatever. But I was like, you know what? I will shave this when the Wolves lose 2 games in a row. That was just kind of like a deal I made with my wife, and also too, she's the most supportive woman in the world, but she's not really listening to this thing. So she's like, well, when the Wolves lose 2 in a row, you'll shave it? And I was like, yep. She's like, well, that'll be easy because you follow a team that's been a dumpster fire. But little does she know that the Wolves are really good. So I might have this thing until March at the rate this is going.
You should probably update her on the Western Conference standings every day. She sees you staring at your screen for 23 hours a day, just giggling and laughing to yourself.
Does she not know what you're staring at? Time is up to 11 hours a day, and 10 of that is just looking at the standings and looking at Timberwolves Brazil and what they tweeted out.
So Mike Conley, this season, and again, it's been 17 games, so we'll give some room for regression here, but Mike Conley currently has career best or second best in his career marks, a career that goes back to 2007, by the way, in the NBA. He has career best marks or second best marks in win shares per 48, in true shooting percentage, and in 3-point percentage. And if you extrapolated his numbers per 36 minutes too, because he's playing like 29 minutes. Yeah. He's right up there in assists per game too. It's like the second best assists per 36 minutes mark of his career. He is. Now, you posed the question just sort of in passing, is he the best point guard in Timberwolves history? I'm just going to throw that question out. I have my answer, but I'd love for you to dig a little bit deeper on that. Do you think Mike Conley is the best point guard in Timberwolves history?
On November 30th, no. Because I just threw that out as a soft grenade on Tuesday, or on whenever we recorded, Monday or Tuesday, and then I was reminded and got down some old YouTube. Like, my production level at work has never been lower. Got some YouTube rabbit holes of Sam Cassell was really good.
Yes, he
Like,
was. That's
really
he's
good.
he's my answer. Terrell
Yeah.
Brandon was also way better than people think.
That's true. Sam Cassell, I think he had a couple 40-point games, maybe like in that playoff run. Have to go look at box scores, but he was very, very good. So no, I do not think, if this was a yes or no question, that Mike Conley is the best point guard in Timberwolves history. But I also lean into the fact of just posing the question is pretty damn impressive, because he's been in Minnesota for like 7 months, and 4 of those weren't really basketball months. So the fact that we're even talking about, I mean, all the stats you just said, it's time for our weekly occurrence of just reading Alan Horton's tweets at Wolves Radio. But last year, in his 16th NBA season, Mike Conley registered his highest assist to turnover ratio of his career, 4.37 to 1, which was 5th best in the NBA. In his 17th season this year, he has 104 assists and 14 turnovers. So I'll let you guys do some math. 7.21 to 1 ratio, 2nd best in the NBA. And then, as you were talking about the threes, 2nd in the league in corner 3-point percentage at 57.7. So
I think he's 44% from 3 overall, like just from anywhere.
Yep.
And it helps too, because you could play this game with other sort of role players that are if you're on a team with LeBron James or Kevin Garnett, go look at like 3-point shooters that play with LeBron or 3-point shooters that played with KG back in the day. Like, go look at Fred Hoiberg's. He led the league in 3-point percentage, I think, one year with the Wolves, because he's just standing in the corner wide open, because they always run a double at KG and he finds him. And so when you're playing on a team where Anthony Edwards is getting doubled and Cat demands a double team at times, or if you're looking to sort of, dump the ball into Rudy, like, you have to account for his existence. And so Mike is the beneficiary of a lot of wide open threes, and to his credit, he's knocking a bunch of them down. So all right, here's a hot take off of your question. I think Sam Cassell, by almost any measurement, either objectively or subjectively, is the best point guard in Timberwolves history. He also had a huge impact on winning, right? He was the first, like, Sprewell was good too, but Sam Cassell was the first true, like, winning sidekick with KG. All due respect to, like, Marbury. Terrell Brandon, highly underrated. I think Mike Conley has a bigger impact on winning games than Stephon Marbury did at point guard for the 25 years ago Timberwolves. Marbury was part of the rise from garbage franchise to playoffs for the first time, but that was also a lot more KG and a lot of Tom Gugliotta for a couple years, and they had some other really good veteran role players. Marbury was a huge part of it, but I think Marbury was also very much a volume scorer. He was like a 40% guy from the field, and so that's my hot take, man, is that give me Cassell and then give me Conley in terms of impact on winning.
Well, if you just want to go completely reckless, I see your take, and I will one-up you. I think if Mike Conley was the point guard of that team 20 years ago, he would have got Sprewell to not focus so much on his contract.
Yeah.
I bet you he could have, because I heard Judd say this the other day, and I think this is the gray area where, as fans or even people that cover the team, we don't always know. I mean, we have access and we see things that, go into practices, go into the locker rooms and stuff. But Judd had an idea that maybe Mike Conley took Karl aside at some point this season and just tried to kind of show some leadership, or just try to, explain to him why some of the things that Karl can do at times in stray voltage hurts the team. We don't know. But that is like my answers. We don't know. Like, we don't know all the stuff that goes on at the hotels and the bus rides and the planes and stuff. And all you can do is kind of ask other players, and all of them, post-game, pre-game, shoot-around, whatever, can take a question that is pretty mundane about any topic, and they just kind of slide Mike's name into it.
Yeah.
About how Mike, like, I don't know, Nas, how'd you figure out how to wear that outfit today? And he's like, well, I was talking to Mike, and then Mike told me that if I wore more comfortable shoes to the game, I feel like there's just a big leadership component of what Mike's doing right now. And I think not only is he said it after the Grizzlies game, he feels the best he's ever felt. He played so well against Memphis, but he also, I think he maybe is starting to smell the same silly things you and I joke about, is that I might actually have a chance to, like, hit my career goal of winning a title. I mean, we forget that Mike Conley's in the same draft as, like, Kevin Durant, right? So there's a couple guys from that have had very historic long careers, and Mike's one of them. But the icing on his cake would be to win a title. So
Let's look up that draft. The 07 draft, man. Was that the Odin draft?
The Odin draft. Mike and Odin were teammates. I think still friends to this day.
That's right. Conley was. I knew he was a lottery pick.
What year was that?
Overall pick, man. 07.
Okay.
So Greg Oden was number 1.
Mm-hmm.
Kevin Durant number 2. Al Horford, great career, number 3. Mike Conley, and then these names: Jeff Green,
still in the league.
Yi Jinlian.
Yeah.
Drafted by the Bucks.
Famously dominated a one-on-one against a folding chair.
Corey Brewer was drafted by the Timberwolves, 7th overall. Brandon Wright by the Bobcats. Joakim Noah,
Yep.
9th. Spencer Hawes, AC Law, Thad Young. It gets real dicey after this, man. I'm just going to skip around here. Nick Young, Daquan Cook, Jared Dudley, 22. Wilson Chandler, Rudy Fernandez, 24. Spain's finest. Any second-round gems in here? Marcus Gasol, 48th overall. To the Lakers, actually. And then
who became teammates with Mike Conley. It is impressive. And those guys, I mean, there's still a couple. Like, I think Thad Young is still in the league. He just serves as a veteran mentor for the Raptors. Basically doesn't really play much. But, I don't know. I can't, you kind of not fall in love, but you become attached to certain players. And I've obviously done that with like a Jaden McDaniels and starting to feel those same feelings about a Leonard Miller. But the Mike Conley stuff is we joke about that he's never had a technical, but that stuff is really cool. I really enjoy that he just can play for 17 seasons and never loses cool. And all the stuff you hear both kind of publicly and privately behind the scenes about what he has done to help galvanize this team. And the vibes are only good, Phil, right? Everything is good right now, but they are going to, back to Tim Conley and the deal he made and putting himself in a situation to have to nail essentially every move moving forward, and he's done that so far.
Yeah.
It'll come up to a point where we're going to be doing multiple podcasts about you can only pick one, I think, maybe 0, but if you can only pick one, are you going to pick Kyle Anderson next summer, or are you going to pick Mike Conley? And we don't need to talk about that now, but but as much as I love Kyle Anderson, it's going to be I just don't know how it's not Mike Conley right now.
Yeah, I mean, if he can still play at this level, dude, Mike Conley right now leads the Timberwolves in win shares per 48. It goes Mike Conley, number 1, Rudy Gobert, number 2, Naz Reid, Troy Brown Jr. in much more limited minutes is next on this list. Karl-Anthony Towns, Anthony Edwards, Jaden McDaniels, and these are all like very good relative to the league win share numbers here too. And then Kyle Anderson is right there. So the only ones that are kind of dragging are like Shake Milton. I would say Shake Milton is the only guy on the team that hasn't joined the party fully yet.
Yeah.
Right? And Nikhil hasn't. I think Nikhil, he's been playing some good defense at times. And maybe this is just kind of who he is. I feel like there's another level to his game too. But Shake is like the only dude who hasn't fully joined this party yet. Is that
no,
fair?
No, that's totally fair. And you're probably going to see. It's not even making excuses for him. With him, what he did in Philly last year is not what they're asking him to do here. Yeah. And I don't think that's a complete cop-out or like excuse, because I think Finch is asking certain guys to do a lot of certain things, right? Troy Brown Jr. is one of them. He's like, hey, I'm just going to ask you to not play for a while, but stay ready. And when Troy Brown Jr. was called upon, he delivered. So with Shake, I just don't know if it's a bad fit or a confidence thing, because his highs while in Philly were really high, and I was really excited about that signing. But he's not the fastest player, right? He's not the most athletic. There's certain kind of aspects of the game. I think he likes to get in transition, but the Wolves aren't necessarily, God's gift of speed in getting into transition. So his flat's a little shot. I think they just got to continue to either give him reps at a lesser amount, kind of shorten his leash a little bit, or maybe just give him a week off. But it's tough right now because this team, the one glaring hole is they don't really have a backup behind Mike. And as good as Mike has been, no Jordan McLaughlin. Nikhil's tried to fill that role. Obviously, Kyle comes in a little bit, but watch these next couple games against these bad opponents. When Mike goes off the court, the opponent really turns the screws up on kind of pressuring the ball handler full court, and the inability for Shake to kind of take that to an advantage has been a bummer. So Troy Brown Jr. is well ahead of him right now in my rotation. I think he might even start tonight for Ant, but the Shake stuff has not gone well, and maybe that's the contract 3 months from now that you dangle with a couple second-round picks and maybe a Wendell Moore to try to upgrade. Yeah.
By the way, producer Ross says Thad Young is 35 years old, is still in the league, has played 3 games this season. So,
Ooh, Ross, there's nothing worse than when I'm like, hey, that player was drafted back then and he's old as hell. And then I'm reminded that they're my age. And then I'm like, oh, okay. How much longer? I feel like you have a longer lifespan in the podcast game than the NBA, but maybe I'm coming to an end.
I don't know. Sometimes podcast careers can be shooting stars in the night, man. You never know.
It gets really bad when the players you grew up watching have kids playing college sports.
Yeah,
That's
dude,
when you're
okay.
like, wow, I'm old.
Here's one. I remember as a kid, I went to when Darryl Strawberry went from the Mets to the Dodgers in the early 90s. I remember my dad's from Chicago, so we'd go back and visit and go to Cubs and White Sox games. And I remember going to a Cubs-Dodgers game, and the Cubs crowd was getting on Darryl because I think he had some drug issues at the time. As we were looking to the 2007 draft, with the second to last pick in the second round, DJ Strawberry from Maryland, Darryl's kid, was drafted in 2007. So like Darryl's kid is 40 years old now. My God.
I know it's
time flies.
Not to get into football, but college football, if you're an NFL buff, Marvin Harrison Jr., going to be one of the best prospects ever. And it's I'm pretty sure I had Marvin Harrison himself, the dad, on my fantasy team 4 years ago. So
I know.
when did this happen?
How about the Blue Jays? The Blue Jays' entire lineup is kids from players you are. It's Dante Bichette's kid, Craig Biggio's kid. Yeah.
Guerrero.
Yes, Vladimir Guerrero's kid.
I mean, hell, Rudy Gobert's son, Draymond Green's playing in the league. That's
right,
crazy
exactly.
too, so.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Well, and here's one more for you, Phil, that you'll know. Torrey Hunter was playing baseball, and his son was playing football for Notre Dame University.
Yeah.
So think about that one.
35 is the new 25. Put that as the show lead today. That is 35 is the new 25. Shout out to Thad Young.
I think it's going to be you got hit by a car.
That should be it right there.
That might be it too.
And you survived getting hit by a car and lived to tell about it is what it is. So, all right, Ross is here it's been a couple weeks since we've done this. We're going to try and make it a weekly staple. The random Wolf of the Week on Flagrant Howls. So Kyle is 2-0 in this exercise, correctly guessing Antoine Walker and then JJ Barea last week. So I feel like this is going to be tough. I almost feel like we should give Kyle earmuffs for 3 clues so that I can get an advantage. But Ross is going to throw out a series of clues. We get up to 3 strikes each. You can just blurt out answers as you will. But if I guess 3 times incorrectly before Kyle has guessed it right, then he wins automatically. So be careful with your strikes.
You guys should know I ran this by Declan about an hour ago. I went through the entire list of clues, and Declan did not get it.
So okay, I was going to say,
you guys handle this.
Declan does not. Declan's only been to 4 Timberwolves games in his life, including the Celtics game this year. So he's picked some good ones.
Okay.
So I don't. I think of the 2. I think one of the listeners came back with a ranking of all 287 players in Wolves history. Declan probably only knows 50 or 60 of them.
Hey, but you know what?
We'll
Declan was raised by Wolves, so he's honorary. It's tough to remember some of those things. So if Declan didn't get it after any clues, I'm pretty nervous because I feel like he's been good on other historical things. So,
but that in itself is a clue, right? That you gave all the clues to someone that is a Wolves fan but doesn't have all the history.
Yeah, this isn't going to be Alexei Shved. It's going to be his cousin.
I think there's one clue that you guys should get right away that Declan didn't. So we'll see how this goes.
Right.
As Phil said, Kyle leads 2-0. He is undefeated. We'll see if that continues today. Clue number 1 for Wolf of the Week, gentlemen. This Wolf of the Week played high school basketball for a school that shares its name with a famous spaghetti-eating cat. That won't be a real good hint. I just wanted to say that.
Wait. Okay, hold on. So
This
I'm trying to think
Wolf
of the
week-
the famous cats.
Yeah, spaghetti-eating cat. Okay, good. This Wolf of the Week was once named his college conference's Conference Player of the Year.
Okay, it's a good player in college. I'm trying to think of all the famous cats. Do you know the cat, Kyle?
Yeah, come on. That one was easy. I'm not going to say it though.
Thanks,
We're going
Kyle.
against each other.
You're going against each other. Don't help him out. This Wolf of the Week has one career win in the NCAA tournament over Utah in the 20-teens. Okay? Beat Utah in the 20-teens in the NCAA tournament. This Wolf of the Week's father, Mike, played in the CBA. I'm liking this one. This Wolf of the Week hails from the soon-to-be defunct Pac-12 Conference.
Is it Jalen Noel?
Oh, come on!
Dude, that is...
You didn't even let me get to the best.
That's lights out.
You didn't even let me get to the best
Active in air quotes NBA player right there.
No, so this is...
How did you nail that one so quickly?
Okay, so hear me out. Damn. So the first... Can you read the first clue again, Ross?
Yes. This Wolf of the Week played high school basketball for a school that shares its name with the famous spaghetti-eating cat.
Okay, I'm going through all the cats, all right? So I'm a big Garfield guy, and Garfield loved food. But Garfield, so what's the clue again? So it's a...
Are you trying to get Ross on spaghetti over lasagna?
Yeah.
Because Garfield loves lasagna.
Lasagna.
That is my bad.
No,
that
Ross,
is my
you
bad.
put some noodles in some red sauce, okay? We don't need to...
But what, can you say the clue again? Say the clue again.
That's a great call. I can't believe I butchered that one.
Dude, I have like 20 Garfield books from when I was a kid. Garfield, but say the clue again.
So this Wolf of the Week played high school basketball for a school that shares its name with a famous spaghetti-eating cat.
So Garfield High School or something, right?
And that's
in Washington, in
right,
Seattle.
So that's Phil.
Yeah.
This is us. So I have a friend.
It's in my neighborhood that I used to live in.
I have a friend out here, Dom, who's very plugged into like the Pacific Northwest basketball thing. But yes, because my original guess was going to be Brandon Roy, because he also went to Garfield High School up in Seattle.
Okay.
But then when you said something about winning a game in the teens, I mean, Brandon Roy had to have been drafted. Brandon Roy was drafted, I think, before Mike Conley. Like when I was still in high school.
He was the Foy year, which would have been
like
the year before,
or something.
06.
So
yeah.
That was a good one. I'm sorry I'm good at this now, but
no, dude, Kyle has a 3-0 lead now, and
I want to
probably
admit,
not looking back. At
gentlemen,
I'm incredibly disappointed in myself. I also have plenty of Garfield books. Used to watch it growing up.
Well, no,
I still cats, and I still butchered lasagna.
Here's the thing, though. Like Kyle would have won no matter what, because I thought you were referring to Garfield, but then I was trying to think of like. I didn't know that there was a Garfield. I spent 2 years in Seattle, but did not know or equate Garfield High School to Seattle specifically. So
honestly, I didn't expect anybody to get that. I just wanted to have a stupid clue.
That was for me in the Pacific Northwest stuff, because I also know Mike Noel, like Jalen's dad or whatever. Like he's an assistant coach, I think, up in Seattle now too. So
yeah.
Okay, that was an easy one for me. I can get why Declan wouldn't get it. The lasagna versus spaghetti thing, that might tear the team apart here.
The clue you guys stole from me that I really wanted to get to. Although spelled differently, this Wolf of the Week's last name can be heard a lot this time of year in a prominent Christmas song.
That's a good.
Ross, only
that's good.
I appreciate
a really good clue right there.
That's a really
dude.
good one.
You're too good at this, Kyle. You're too good. And I never once thought that you living out in that area would actually help get that question right. So
bias.
Dude, he's rooted, man. Yeah. If you start to list like, didn't Ridnour play at Oregon?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Like there's some Wolves connections up there for sure. Jade McDaniels,
Levine played.
You know what though, Kyle? You don't need to apologize. It may have been skewed towards you. But you still have to put in the work and get it right.
Yeah, exactly.
Which
Kyle knew what pitch was coming. He still has to hit it out of the ballpark.
I know the Jazz are coming to town and they suck, but I still got to beat them. So, and I did. Look at me, I beat them.
Good work.
So,
Good work.
All right,
boys.
thank you, Ross. Great
Thanks,
job,
Ross.
Kyle. Man, we're climbing out of a hole here, 3-0. By the way, I'll be at Target Center tonight. So if you are a Flagrant Howls listener or viewer, come on up and let's dap it up over the number one team in the Western Conference. See if they can beat the Jazz tonight. By the way, if you haven't already, please help us out by giving us a 5-star rating or a positive review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And click that like button and the subscribe button on the Score North YouTube channel so we can keep spreading the word, Kyle, about this Timberwolves lifestyle podcast, Flagrant Howls. So we'll see how long that mustache stays on Kyle's face. See you guys.